done, we have another type of issue that we have to foresee. And as armchair GMs, we have to foresee it because we're professionals here. The Seattle Kraken are officially part of the NHL, and now, Alex, I'm going to let you maybe talk about everyone that's unprotected in terms of goaltenders, Ds, forwards, and who should we be worried about. So go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So expansion draft, the team gets two options. They can either protect 7 forwards, 3D, and a goalie, or they can pick 8 skaters and a goalie. So realistically, I mean, like you said, we are professionals here, but I do turn to some, I guess, paid professionals for my analysis here. So realistically, Montreal is going to go with the 7 forward, 3D, 1 goalie option. And that leaves not some big names potentially exposed, but some important pieces, especially what we've seen this year. So a guy like Jake Allen realistically would be exposed. And like we've touched on a few times this year, backup goalie has been a problem for this team for 4 or 5 years now. So that could be a big loss. Bergevin did extend him, so his salary comes down next year. I think he has two years at like 2.5 for $2.75 million. So
yeah, something like that.
It'd be nice to know that we could keep a backup goalie like Allen to have that. If Seattle doesn't want a goalie, there's guys like Sherratt, Kulak, or Edmondson who would potentially be exposed on defense. So again, not huge pieces, but a solid number 4 guy in Sherratt or maybe Edmondson. And then on forward, realistically, just because most of the guys are unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents, Seattle wouldn't touch that. So it'd realistically be a guy like Byron, Jake Evans, Jordan Wheel. So, I mean, I wouldn't see that happening. I think the most probable option would be a guy like Jake Allen or one of our D-men, which again is not a huge piece, but it's something that we've needed for a while that would be a shame to lose. When it comes to these expansion drafts, we saw it in Vegas that teams are making side deals so that they would pick a certain player. We saw that kind of backfired for Florida, losing Riley Smith and Marcia So to Vegas during that draft, which was a bit of a disaster. So I could see teams being hesitant to do that. But yeah, I guess conclusion, it would suck to lose Jake Allen for nothing since he's finally seemed to have solved our backup goalie issue.
I don't know enough about what's going on the other teams and who's available, but I would assume that Jake Allen is probably the go-to goalie for the Seattle Kraken. I don't know if there's anybody else that's like outstandingly good.
There's a few other options. Like there's obviously Braden Holtby in Vancouver. Like if they go with protecting Demko, Holtby is gonna be exposed. It's also in Pittsburgh. There's kind of a duo of goalies there, and Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith. So that's another option. So yeah, I'm not too sure, but there's also like there's fucking what's it called? Oh no, but it's Vegas. It's true. I was gonna say Robin Leonard, but
yeah, they can't.
They're not
be
picking
chosen
from
right?
Vegas. So
yeah. It's yeah, because I would be curious to know what the price would be to keep Jake Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be is it a first? Because that's a bit much.
As much as Jake Allen has been key this season, like. I'm looking at the list of things you have right now. I think a Thomas Tatar or a Phil Deneau would be a bigger loss. And I'm not saying
the only thing with those though, they're free agents. So you don't have to protect them and they can just choose not to sign with Seattle, right? So realistically, if they want to stay in Montreal, they just tell Montreal like, yeah, we'll sign after the expansion draft and that's that, right?
So they don't even need to be, they can't even be picked in the expansion draft.
No, I think so. If I understand correctly, Seattle gets, I think, 3 days before the free agent window to negotiate with any free agents. But if they don't want to sign, they don't want to sign, and that's that. So it's less of a big deal for those guys.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still risky though for the Montreal Canadiens to because you're an unrestricted free agent. You have any option from any team, so if you'd have to be extremely loyal to the Montreal Canadiens. Now I know guys like Thomas Tatar have come out and say they love it here in Montreal, but we've seen that in the past. We've seen again, people that don't like Marc Bergevin are going to say that Radulov was his fault. But we've seen a Radulov that said he loved it in Montreal and then went to Dallas for supposedly the same contract, maybe too late. I don't know. Anyways, point is that things can change. Sorry, Justin, you were about to say something.
Well, just to say about Radulov, he was also like a rental kind of. Like he was there for 1 year. So it's maybe not as much of an imprint on their careers as Tatar or Deneau would be. But yeah, you do have to be careful. Like we all know about the kind of the talks surrounding Deneau and his contract at the beginning of the season, that there was kind of like a back and forth between him and Marc Bergevin. So you have to think that's something that could happen. So it's, I think if I'm Marc Bergevin, I love Phil Deneau. I think we should keep him. If I'm Marc Bergevin, I'll do my best to keep him and potentially Thomas Tatar. I think Thomas Tatar too is a really a player that's not expendable on our team. Like he's consistently put up the most points on our team the past 3 years, barring Max Domi with his 70-point season. So yeah, those are two guys that I'd really be scared to lose. Jake Allen too. Like I think Jake Allen is great, and he's been great this season, and he's a great support to Carey Price, and not even support. Like he's taken the place now that Carey Price is injured. So yeah, it would be bad to lose Jake Allen. But there are always goalie options out there. That's the only thing I'll say. Like there's always free agents in the goalie market.
And the only other thing I'll say about Jake Allen, as great as he's been, right? He's had the starting role in the past and has not been able to fill those shoes. Kind of like a Brian Elliott that also was a Blues goaltender, then went to Philly. They tried him out. It still didn't work. These are guys that, for whatever reason, some of them are just really good backup goaltenders. Even Anton Khudobin, if I'm not mistaken, isn't having the greatest season with Dallas, as hot as he was last year in the playoffs. It's just there's some goaltenders that are more designated for that role than to be the starters. So that could be a no-go for whoever else. Sorry, Justin, you're about to say something?
I just thought of another goalie tandem that's kind of very similar to Montreal's situation. It's Florida with Sergei Bobrovsky and I think Chris Driedger. I don't know how you say his name.
I think so, yeah. I think it's Driedger.
Yeah, so they're kind of in the situation where Driedger's taking the top spot, but they have this like massive contract in Bobrovsky's contract, which is I think almost the same as Carey Price's 10.5.
It's
it's around there. It might be a different term, but so that's another thing that they really have to think about. Like, are they protecting Bobrovsky, or are they?
Yes, this is a perfect segue. Okay, because we're gonna argue this one. Okay, at least we'll try. And if you guys disagree, pas de problème. Go ahead in the comments. If you're like Loser McPoozer, I'm literally not making this up. This is his account name. So. If you do not agree with us, please go ahead and make a rationale. We'll take it in and we'll use it to counter for the next time. So, do the Montreal Canadiens, is this realistic, okay? That the Montreal Canadiens go up to Carey Price, number 31, at the end of the season and say, Carey, listen, we're heading into the Seattle expansion draft. And do you think you could waive your no move clause and we potentially expose you to the Seattle Kraken? What do you think about this? Do you think this is a move that you, as Marc Bergevin, would even attempt? And do you see positives in this? So, I'm going to start with whoever wants to start here. Raise your hand if you can. Okay, Alex, go ahead.
I would not be surprised if Marc Bergevin would ask Carey Price to waive his no-move clause, but realistically, Seattle wouldn't want him, is my take on this. Like, Seattle would not want to take on this contract for a goalie who's been declining. Price might possibly even want to go there. Maybe a fresh start would do him some good. His wife's from nearby. He played juniors there. Like there's definitely a storyline and a connection there, but I don't see why Seattle would take on that risk of an aging, declining goalie on the biggest contract. And when it comes to Bergevin Price's relationship, I don't know. If there's a guy who would do it, I think it would be Marc Bergevin. I don't think he really cares about that stuff. So that's my take.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Shots somewhat fired. Carey Price, we still love you. We're talking about the product once again. Justin, please, for you.
To me, I think Seattle would love to have a Carey Price. I think they're obviously a new team, and they're a team that needs to add a lot of players that aren't necessarily going to be the top end players with huge contracts. So you can't afford like a $10 million contract to spend on an all-star goalie. And yes, Carey Price has been declining on a shitty Montreal Canadiens team.
Statistically, from time to time, he's been fantastic. I'll just add that as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying about shitty Montreal Canadiens team. It's like this team around him kind of wasn't up to par with the goalie that we have. The thing I'll say about it is when Vegas came into the league, obviously Marc-Andre Fleury was their pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he was a goalie who had just come off becoming like the backup off a young goalie in Matt Murray. And he got picked up by Vegas Golden Knights. Life got breathed into him. And now he is one of the top goalies in the league, bar none. And he's just dominating with Vegas. Vegas is a great team. That's something I'll say for sure. But you can't argue that Marc-Andre Fleury hasn't been amazing for them. And he kind of just became better when he went there. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Seattle, a new expansion team, would want a player like that and kind of replicate something like in the Fleury situation. So yeah, to answer your question from like 10 minutes ago, I don't think it would happen between Marc Bergevin and Carey Price, because I think Marc Bergevin has already kind of said his piece on Carey Price. He is the goalie he signed that contract to, and he's capable of being that goalie. So I think he believes in him and he wants him to be a Montreal Canadian for life. So I don't think he would do that. I don't think it's in the cards.
Yeah, Alex, I could not disagree more with the take, because and again, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that think that this is the right move. This is a recency bias from my perspective. If you're going to give up on Carey Price, he's still 33 years old. And just that example of Fleury for me is the perfect one, because it was a goalie that got shunned.
It's a bad example. Fleury is not a good example. I'll let you finish.
No, please tell me why.
Okay, Fleury had one bad season in Pittsburgh. I have the stats right here. His one season before going to Vegas was his only bad season, and he only played 38 games that year. And then in Vegas, he had a good first season, had two below average seasons the next two, and now again he's on fire. Price has had 3 and now 4 below average seasons. It's not a comparable at all. I know Fleury had playoff struggles, but he only had one below average year in Pittsburgh. It wasn't even awful. It's just because their expectations were sky high after winning back-to-back cups.
But that's it. That goes to show you that Fleury had the team that was in front of him that was supposed to win a cup, whereas Carey Price has been through a rebuild/retool. And then when they got into the playoffs this year and they started playing to their potential, he was also out of his mind. So you don't think that with a good team that Carey Price can turn it around? And you don't think that the Seattle Kraken, who's a starting franchise, is going to attract more players and more free agents with a guy of that stature, that everybody still to this day, regardless of the stats, is going to say that Carey Price is probably one of the top goaltenders in the league? They're going to all say that still. I know that on paper it makes sense. I just think that it's not always paper. It's not always the fucking GFX, whatever it may be. Like sometimes it's more than that. There's more to what a player can represent to a franchise than just his play. And when you look at Carey Price, there's what he could potentially do that we all think he still has in him, or at least a lot of us do, that might not show us consistently. And I think that if Carey Price is available, the Seattle Kraken take him, no question. I think. I could be wrong.
I'm not saying
let us know what you think.
I'm not saying he doesn't have it in him. He definitely has the ability. It's just I don't see a team taking a risk on that. I know, like you said, just that Seattle has to get some players with cap hit, but as we've seen, like Vegas is the highest salary cap team right now, the highest payroll team right now, and they're 3 years in. Like they're not going to be a cap floor team if they actually want to compete. And I believe they can find a better, lower paid, younger goalie and fill in the team with better players to surround that. I don't see a team wanting to take a risk on an aging Carey Price. I hope he refines his form in Montreal, and he definitely does have the ability, but I don't think it's worth the risk for a franchise. And when Fleury went to Vegas, he wasn't being paid $10.5 million. He was on 5 or 6, right? It's not.
Yeah, you're right.
And he wasn't on a long-term deal, right? Price, like you said, is 33. It goes until he's 39, I believe, his contract. It's not like I do see the similarities, but I think Price is kind of the farthest extreme of that I don't see it being worth the risk.
I mean, again, I won't die on the hill on my argument. I'm just saying that, like, for me, Carey Price, for what it represents for a new franchise to bring in a guy of that stature, there's tremendous value, I think. And there's that talent level that can back it up. So that's it on my side. Justin, looks like you're about to add on, unless I'm wrong.
I mean, no, it was more just I thought the same thing as you. Like, Carey Price is obviously like a marketable name in the NHL. Like, he's won the Olympics. Like, he's won basically everywhere except for the Stanley Cup. He's regarded as one of the best goalies, one of the best goalies of recent times, I'll say. And yeah, I wanted to say something else, but I forget. Well, another thing about Vegas being like one of the highest capped teams, I don't know how the fuck you say that. It's because they had so much success at the beginning, so they're like, fuck it, we might as well pile on and sign all these players, like get Pacioretty, get a Mark Stone, right? I always get it mixed up with Michael Stone for some reason. Mark Stone, yeah, exactly. So I don't think at the beginning, like, the Vegas Golden Knights were expecting to have their cap be at the ceiling in the first 3-4 years of their franchise. So it's we'll see what happens. It's hard to really speculate and compare to the old expansion, because the old expansion was like, they kind of did it and they were like, oh fuck, the expansion team made the cup finals. Like, this is not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's a bit more like balanced this time, but it's going to be interesting for sure. I'm excited to see what kind of team they can build.